JC, it's a pleasure to meet you face to face finally. You and I have spoke several times on the phone, and you piqued my interest because you know that I've been talking about the food insecurity that this nation is facing, specifically
Yes.
with the work that Michael Yan and I have been doing on Operation Burning Edge, and you've been tracking that diligently. So appreciate you reaching out to me and providing solutions, because that's clearly what I'm trying to deliver for our audience is solutions so that they can be food secure as we go through this, what we call a calamity of the Great Reset, and we battle through the transition. Well, the good guys or the bad guys win, but either way, we all got to eat. So it's great to have you
That's
on.
correct. That's correct.
All
And
right, for my audience's edification, where are you currently? And
right now, I am in New Jersey, which is one of the more challenging locations. I'm just north of Princeton by about 15 miles.
okay. Give us a little bit of a background on your history as somebody who has developed the technology that we're going to dive into, how you got to where you are, because the solution that we're going to talk about on this show is quite fascinating, in fact.
I happy to do that. All right. So my background, my education is I'm a civil engineer and a geologist, and so civil engineers are the guys who build society, the waterworks, the buildings, the dams, um, and and so I went off to Eastern Europe right after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1992, where I spent 18 years. And there I became a very high profile person in the country of Latvia. So I got to see things that almost no other American got to see. And I get to see it as an engineer and try and figure it out. And it was fascinating, and we could spend hours on it. But the bottom line is, I couldn't figure out why the collapse of the Soviet Union was peaceful. There weren't any riots. There wasn't, and it really came down to what I believe is two issues. And the most important issue there is that they had food security.
Right.
The Soviet system had food security. In other words, the majority of their food was grown within 30 miles of their population centers.
Did you
Okay,
watch the Tucker Putin interview about a
I
week and a half
did.
ago? You did, and he
I
did talk
did.
about the USSR's dissolution back into Mother Russia, but Ukraine, which isn't even a country, it's basically the word stands for border or outlying area, is what Ukraine means in Russian. Is quite a breadbasket and provides a lot of
Yeah,
food security for the world.
there's a bunch of things. I mean, we're talking about the big issue here, and the first thing is I was a very high profile. I was also the president of the American Chamber of Commerce, which was the first chamber of commerce and the most dominant one in the location that was the spearhead of the expansion of the EU and NATO. Tiny little country called Latvia, but that was the spearhead. And I was at the front of the private business sector. So I got to see things that many people didn't see. And one of them was I was told in 2009 to watch the Ukraine, there's going to be a civil war. So
Mm,
I was warned about this war and updated on exactly how it's playing out, right? This war was planned, and it's not planned by the Russians. And so um, and let's get to the two largest bread baskets in the world are the U.S. Western states, where we produce a huge amount of food, and Ukraine, the breadbasket of Europe,
right.
and both are under attack. One's in a war, and the other one's in a drought. Except for we know that we have the ability to manipulate weather. So why aren't
Correct.
we causing rain? Why aren't we causing rain if we know how to commit?
For the
Influence.
same reason that the government keeps sending money to Ukraine to perpetuate the war, right? They want everybody
Exactly.
enslaved and in fear. And frankly, they have a depopulation agenda. They made that evidently clear with the depop shot.
And
So,
and the question is, who gave the order? That's the question. Who gave the order for the depopulation? Well, let's get on to it right there. That food, unless you can learn to stare at the sun and take energy, you better have food. And how do we create that? And so, if we look at America, so I saw that the Soviets had two things. They had the majority of their food was grown within 30 miles of their population centers, and the majority of former Soviets had what's known as a dacha. we don't have a direct translation of it, but a dacha means pretty much anything in the countryside, from a castle to a tool shack, that they were allowed to grow food for 20 to 30 years. And these were little paradise gardens. Basically, we would know them as victory gardens.
Right.
And so 90% of the people of the former Soviet Union, which was about 200 million, I mean 300 million when it collapsed, had gardens. And then if you look at America, 98% of our population does not raise food. Less than 2% are on farms that have an idea, right? And our food is delivered just in time, generally 1,500 to 2,000 miles away. For us on the East Coast, like in New York, the food is 2,000 miles away to 3,000 miles away, delivered just in time. 50% of our food is imported. All you have to do is have a collapse of the supply chain, and the majority of Americans no longer have food. And you have about 2 weeks to solve the problem. And of course, the problem can't be solved in 2 weeks.
Right.
So how do you solve the problem? You create food security. What's food security? Defined by the World Health Organization, who I don't really like, but sometimes use their information, that food security is food production and food accessibility. We in America do not have food accessibility. We have a very accurate and brittle system of delivery. If that breaks, we don't have food. Okay, so how do we create food accessibility? And the answer is, at least this is the answer I think, is 20% of our food that we use or we eat needs to be grown within 30 miles of a population center. That's simple. The problem there is we don't have those small farms. The way to create it is to create a massive amount of small farms, and that is a massive real estate investment project.
Right.
Right. And so I designed a process with some other very, very fine, very brilliant people. One is Richard Allen Miller. Doc Ram is his nickname, and the other one is Matt Stein, who unfortunately passed away. Matt wrote a book called When Technology Fails, which I recommend everybody gets, because it tells you when technology fails, what happens. When the electricity grid goes down for a long period of time, what do you do? A very valuable book. And so the question is, how do we build a massive amount of small local farms quickly in the control of local people, right? And one of the things that we'll figure out is that 90% of our food is controlled by 10 corporations. That's one of the problems. Now, I'm not saying get rid of big business. I'm saying we have to balance this out. So how do we do it? And so I came up with the plan. And one of the things I had, one of my investments in Eastern Europe was a prefabricated manufacturing of housing, where we could put up a huge amount of buildings very quickly. So how do we do it with farms? And the answer we have. The answer is actually sitting there right in our right there. That it's the same thing as like McDonald's. McDonald's is not a restaurant. McDonald's is a management system. You can put up a McDonald's in less than 45 days. It's a management system. And then people just follow the management. I mean, 16-year-old kids knowing how to cook French fries anywhere around the world, right? And so I designed the project, right? The challenge is getting to some of the wealthy people to start investment. That's my biggest challenge. I'm kind of stuck on a farm. I live on a farm. And I'm stuck on the farm dealing with the farm issues every day. Outside of New York. New York is going to be toast if we lose the electric grid.
Oh, clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly.
And that when you actually study, and one of the guys I recommend is a guy named Jonathan Hollerman, Hollerman, who has a book called Survival Theory. He's one of the top guys in the nation, right? And he is a friend, so I befriended him, and it's an incredible book. He has Survival Theory 1 and Survival Theory 2, and it spells it all out. right? That if our electric grid goes down for any reason, we're in trouble. And so it actually adds to that, drops our supply chain. So there are maybe 13, 14 ways that our supply chain can collapse. Some of them are guaranteed to happen. We just don't know when, but they're guaranteed to happen, and nobody's doing anything about it. We're just sitting ducks waiting for this to happen. And so we have to, we basically have to create around the country small sustainable farms that are electronic magnetic EMP proof. Um, so that we will have food when the system breaks.
Right. So how do we do that?
Well, the first is to build the prototype. You know, it's like build the first McDonald's. How do you build a McDonald's that's easily duplicatable? Well, I've already designed it. I'm just looking for the funding. The problem is getting to the guys who have the funding.
So can we talk about the prototype, what it looks like, what it includes? I mean, what are all the assets of the farm? We have chickens, we have cows, you know, we have what kind of vegetables are we growing? What's the irrigation look like? How do you harvest? How do you store, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, basically there it is. It's, okay, so for this, you want to have a limited menu. In other words, like McDonald's, that's a limited menu. You don't get pizza at McDonald's, right? You don't get linguine. You know, so the limited menu are certain types of livestock specifically. And if you notice, there's an attack going on worldwide on animal protein. All right. So the easiest animal protein to raise is the chicken egg, not the chicken egg. Right. So you design it. For instance, our farm, I can incubate up to 2,000 chickens in 1 month.
On how big a piece of land, how much property is needed for all of this?
Well, you know, it's kind of a rule of thumb. It's like the same as a McDonald's. You have a mini McDonald's, and then the bigger one looks like it's exactly double, and then the bigger is exactly triple. So you want to start out for something like 10 acres, right? In general, right? Because you're looking at residential areas, so you got to find 10 acres. But for instance, my farm is 50 acres, and then some of the bigger ones are 400 acres, right? So I'm working on a project of 400 acres. Right. And
but
then,
this is all, it's all scalable, what you're saying. So 10,
exactly.
50, 400, it scales, right?
Exactly. It's just a mathematical formula.
Okay.
Keep it simple. I love keep it simple. Keep it simple.
So we have chickens, and you have a way to, you know, keep the chickens rotating around.
You have chickens, and then you have incubators. You can have ducks and incubators. The other one would be milking goats. Why? Because a milking goat will last for maybe 8 years, right? And they get I'll add up to all of the animals. And the one of the other ones, rabbit. Rabbits is an incredible source of animal protein, right? and
they reproduce rather quickly and efficiently.
Like rabbits.
Like rabbits, right.
Great. And then the other one is pigs, but manageable pigs, you know, not these monster 600-pound things, and pigs will give off, and all 5 of these animals, right, these livestock will multiply quickly, so that if we have a break in the food supply, we can exponentially turn on the spigot and get these things multiplying quickly. Right. Yeah. Like a chicken should, you know, depend on the breed of the chicken, but they can give 300 eggs a year. Well, you know, just, you know, multiply that out, how quickly you can increase the food supply. The pigs will give generally 2 litters a year of maybe 10 piglets. So, and they grow to 200 pounds within 6 months. So those versus a cow, which I'm not saying a milking cow isn't important, but a cow will give 1 calf a year. So it's a linear expansion, not an exponential expansion. So we have to think about these things. So that's one. Then we are going to go through weather changes. Obviously, we won't get into the argument, and I doubt that it's fluctuating cows that's causing this, or my very large SUV, right? I think we're being lied to there.
Definitely.
But we are going to have weather changes, And I think it's directly related to that big plasma ball in the sky, right? We call the sun. And that we are going to go into, at least the engineers, I believe, and the scientists, we're going to go into what's known as a grand solar minimum, where we're going to have great changes in our weather patterns, and we don't react very quickly to that. But one of the things we want to invest into is basically hydroponics, right?
Okay.
Growing stuff inside basically greenhouses, right? And so you design a system that has, let's say, 5,000 square feet of greenhouses, right? But you design it that it uses very little electricity. Okay, we have been seduced by convenience, and specifically with electricity. But
Right.
you can actually get the greenhouses to work really well if you plan them correct and use other things. For instance, I have an outdoor wood burner, so I can heat my greenhouse during winter, um, along with the house, as long as I have wood. And there are many other things. For instance, key will be obviously a water source, right? So you have to have a well, right? And you better have a backup for the well pump, and you better have electricity for the well pump. And I prefer to use the main source is a diesel generator. Why? Diesel's easier to find. It's a much more efficient gas. And you can make it. You can literally make diesel oil or biodiesel, and that you want to have alternative sources, right? And so if you have a tractor, you also have what's known as a PTO generator that attaches to the tractor, because the tractor is the diesel engine anyway. So you can store diesel up to 10 years. By the way, I'm rattling this off really quick because we only have a few minutes to describe how we save the world. Right?
Yeah.
Um,
No, but people just need to understand all the pieces of the puzzle that go into doing this. And this
that,
isn't this doesn't have to be a one-man operation or a one-woman
no,
operation. You can do
no,
this in
no,
collaboration with your neighbors. You know,
it's just the opposite. Where you plan,
you
first of all,
use all your front yards contiguously
yeah,
down the street and get your 10
you
acres, boom, turn it all over.
you plan for the worst and you hope for the best. And hope is
Mhm.
not a strategy,
No,
right? No, it's not a strategy. So you plan for the worst. And one of the worst is that, if if unfortunately, if our system breaks where we lose our police. Okay, now what happened in Eastern Europe is that they kept their police. The policing still stayed in force. So it didn't turn into Mad Max, or actually, I like to call it Mad Maxine, because of all the LGBTQ people in the cities. Yeah, but
right.
if it turns into Mad Max, okay, two people are not going to be able to hold down a farm. It's just impossible. Jonathan Holman covers off on that. You need a certain amount of adults on a farm.
That's right.
All right. And so my rough calculation is minimum of 10 adults. Well, in general, if you have 10 adults, if they're a pair, right, then they come with 2.6 children, or actually 3 children. So you get a family of 5. Now, the other thing is, if the system breaks, it's almost like if we are on a big, massive freight liner called the USS United States Corporation, and it's collapsing, and you look around, you go, there aren't any lifeboats. What if this breaks? Right? You go, you have to design your own lifeboat. Well, the first part of it is you design your lifeboat, but who goes on it? Your family, obviously. Well, in most cases, there's but your family goes. But you go, if you're going to be stuck on an island for 2 years or 3 years until the system rebuilds, which is probably what happened in Eastern Europe. It took 3 or 4 years before things started to happen, right? That you want certain skill sets with you, right? And the first skill set, the most important skill set, is a farmer, right? You want a farmer, right? Because and you come from a farming background. It takes generations to know this stuff, right?
My
And
husband
so
does. My husband does. My mother grew up on a farm, but I got the benefit of gardening when I was a kid, pulling up
yeah, but
earthworms.
And so you look at the skill sets that if you built your lifeboat big enough, and who are you going to invite? Well, you're not going to invite the lawyer or the accountant. Well, you
No.
could invite the lawyer if you want to use them as chum, but that's beside the point. That's just my personal opinion, right? Right? I'm a little biased, but so you who do you want? You want the farmer, the mechanic, the machinist. We're going to lose the supply chain, so we're
Right.
going to have to make our own parts. And we have this genius, but this genius is getting old. This genius is 55 to 75 now. We have to teach our youth how to machine parts, right? And then of course, there's going to be such a massive shortage of food that most people won't have it, and we in the worst case situation. And so you're going to have to protect your farm, and this is exactly what we're seeing in Venezuela. So you're going to have security. Well, we have a bunch of security guys. We have a bunch of guys coming back from the sandbox in Afghanistan, right? And then what
Right.
happens? And then the next would be a doctor, but not these pill pushers, because there's not going to be a supply of pills. You want what's known as a trauma doctor, the ER doctor. The guy knows how to deal with breaks and critical things like that.
Yep.
And then of course you want a dentist. Why? If you actually look, dental is one of the great advances we are fortunate to have. And then of course you want a veterinarian because you want to keep the animals happy.
Right.
And then, of course, you want a holistic healer, because you're going to have to go back to nature to figure out which of the herbs are the healing. And by the way, these people all know these skills. The challenge is that if you looked at all of those, and also you want to have music and arts. Why? If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at
Right.
the top, as humans, we thrive on this higher level of learning, and music is at the top, right? And so you have these combination of skill sets that you want to bring, and they generally come with kids, right? And so that's roughly 10 skill sets with, okay, so that's 50 people. Gets expensive, and you have to have a farm. You actually have two farms in the beginning, because you can't tell people where you're storing the food, right? Unless they buy into the system. So you have to have a model to show them, which is one of the things, the show model. But then you get to
Does this business plan, though, if you have an investor to help you develop a farm like this with all of these requirements that you've just laid out, clearly you have to find the people that represent all the different trades you just rattled off. And you need to have a stand-up model. Tell me, how do you expect the next investor to come along? Are they going to just come along with all their friends that happen to be dentists and doctors and
no,
homeopaths
no,
and
no, it
mechanics?
doesn't work. It'll never work that way.
Okay.
Right. What happens is you need basically a funding investor for the real estate project. Period.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
So and that he doesn't have to be local. He doesn't have to be one coming to it. So it can be somebody from Texas or California, or say, hey, this is a good idea. It helps if it's somebody from New York, so that he and his family have a location to go to. That's it.
Location to go
Okay.
to and benefit also from the work product of the farm. I get that. But in
Right.
terms
And
of
so,
getting all of these resources, tradesmen and tradeswomen resources, do you put up a help wanted sign? I mean, how do you make sure that you have all these resources on your farm?
well, there's a little bit of two parts to it. So let me finish off on the second part, is that this starts to get so expensive because you also have to have 2 years of food stored for every person. Why? Because if you don't get to if your first harvest doesn't work for any reason, it gets you at least to the second harvest. So you have to have medicine stored. You have to have machinery stored. So it gets really expensive. So what I said was 10 skill set families
Right.
and 10 investor families. In other words, 10 families of 5 that pay for, well, so one family that is a contributing member that pays for one of the skill sets. All right. Otherwise, they don't get on the lifeboat. It's that simple. All right, and now, how do you find? There are two parts. What's the search model to find the investors? What's the search model to find the skill sets?
Right.
And the skill sets are not as difficult as you would think, because what happens is, for instance, I've had police, top SWAT people, some of the nastiest cities in New Jersey, come to me and say, the government dole is going to break, and when it breaks, we're going to take the guns and leave. They actually said that to me. I didn't ask about this. And I'm there like, oh my God. So your line of police, the police know that if the system breaks or when the system breaks, they're taking the guns and leaving. And then he looks at me and goes, can I come to your place? I said, yeah. And I was like, oh yeah. As long as I have 2 years of food stored for everybody on his family.
So that, in light of the current situation, JC, we're looking at, we're looking at an imminent collapse if we go to war. The Panama Canal, the Panamanian government has totally destabilized. That canal is already operating on fumes because of the drought down there. They're unable to move the amount of ships they normally do. We're looking at supply chain crises already that haven't fully manifested, but all of the right ingredients are there for the complete collapse of our supply chain. Not to mention our railroad systems are compromised. We've already had we've got a Chinese army already infiltrated inside the wire in this country, and we're waiting for the dog whistle from the bad guys to create and unleash holy hell in this country. I don't think we're going to be able to get 2 years of food stored up. So then what?
Well, actually, I'll take the challenge.
I know a lot of people out there have stored 2 years of food, but I'm just saying in general, I don't see all of this coming together that quickly.
Well, actually, it can come together quickly if you're funded, right? For instance, because
so every farm would require funding. You are going to require some wealthy individual or group of individuals to come together to provide this for these.
It's much better. It's much better if you find one individual that says, "Okay, well, listen, I'll put up $10 million to start the process." Okay, because the other people will fight to get onto onto the lifeboat. How valuable would a seat be on the Titanic in a lifeboat? Well, when people realize they're sinking, they will pay whatever they have to. Okay, so finding the customers will be just a matter of time. Finding the investor is the biggest challenge here. This is what I'm talking about right now. Finding people who go, listen, I could put up $10 million or I could put $3 million and get this thing started, right? And now the other important thing is you want to have your farm within 3 hours of your main location if you're going to it. In other words, you don't want your lifeboat sitting in Siberia because you're not going to get to it, right? Or Kansas. You're just not going to get to it. And so the experts, and I study the experts and I hire them for consulting. The farthest you will get is in most critical situations, like if 9/11 went nuclear, would be 3 hours. So you have to find the location within 3 hours. That's the best location. And then you have to prepare that. And in general, you have to keep it what's known, and I think Michael Leon had mentioned, it's like operational security. You have to have it where nobody knows where it is, because everybody will fight to get in the lifeboat just to save their lives. And unfortunately, if you're a first responder, you know this thing called it's my mind. That you have to make a judgment on who you can save and who you can't save. Triage, thank you. I was a first responder, but I'm also getting a little old and these words slip. But so I had to be trained in triage. I was a ski patrol, a senior level ski patrol. And if that lift broke, I had to make a decision on who I could spend time on to save and who I couldn't. Right. Well, we are in triage right now, Ann.
Oh, sure we are. Yeah.
Right. We're deciding who's smart enough to save themselves, who's smart enough to store food, and then so what is it that we need? And it really comes down to do it yourself. It's called lone wolf, which is very dangerous because there's going to be hunting teams. I already know there's hunting teams going to be looking for these people.
Yeah.
right? They already told me. Some of the police are going to go, oh, we're not gonna plan on this. We're just going to go and take from the other people, right? Well, what do you think MS-13 is going to do? What do you
Uh,
think of
for
anyone
sure.
gang is going, right?
They're
This is going
already
to get
fighting each
vicious.
other in New York City right now. You've got gang
It, it,
warfares that have all been imported thanks to
it,
the
it,
open borders
it's already here. And so
here.
in order to protect yourself, right, as a family, you need basically a small community between 50 and 100. Over 100 starts to get unmanageable simply because of human dynamics. Under 50, you're going to be working 19, 20 hours a day and be stressed to the max. So an ideal group is about 100. That's pretty easy to do, right? And now you don't necessarily have to find the farmer immediately, or the machinist, or the dentist. By the way, I'm not going into the apocalypse without a dentist. No way. Right. I can go in without a doctor, because if you get sick, you die, no problem. But the dentist, you just sit there and suffer, right? But if you've already set that up, if you already set up the dental office at your location, right? If you already have the supplies, you'll find a dentist as soon as the supply chain drops, right? He'll be very willing to come, right? And so then there's another thing. How do you set this up really quickly? You go, well, you can't buy, in general, we need 2,000 pounds of food per person per year. Okay.
Okay.
And that can cost up to $5,000. Well, if you have time, I can go out and buy that within a week or two. It's not that difficult if you know what to buy. It's like you go to something like we have here in New Jersey, Restaurant Depot. I can buy, 10 tons of rice right now. Right now, you have to know how to store it. You have to have a location. There are other things. In fact, actually, it was a little late to come on. It was because I have a freeze drying machine, and I'm freeze drying food that will last 40 years or 30, 20 years. 20 years. So I was packing up my freeze drying, and I can send you some curry dried chicken, which is what I was making. So, and by the way, I practice what I do. I mean, I literally practice it. How do you create electricity when you don't have diesel? Well, that's simple. It's called wood gas. I sent you a whole article on it. Wood gas or syngas, right? And
So
okay, it's inconvenient. Yes.
I because we're running a little bit long on time here, or short on time, I should say. I just want to cap the fine points on this. To get into a 10-acre farm, you're thinking, and everything put together that you need, all the equipment, everything you need, you're looking at how much of an investment on average. I know the land is going to be variable from state to state and all that sort of stuff, but assuming land prices are the same everywhere, what is the capital outlay for equipment, et cetera? And then land would be the variable.
Roughly, for the contributing members of the people who are paying it, it'll be between $2 and $3 million.
Okay, and then your land price on top of that. Got it. Okay.
No, that includes the land price.
Oh, okay. So that's fairly insignificant if you put 10 people together and they, it's $300,000, which may be their life savings, but at this point,
300 million. I'm sorry, 3 million. Right.
Right. So 10 people times
10 people of 3 million.
300,000 each is 3 million. So if 10 people kicked in 300,000, and assuming that may be their life savings.
No, we're okay. So the first project is 2 farms. Okay. So it's a 50-acre farm and a 400-acre farm with a private landing strip right outside.
This is what you're looking to develop, and you need an investor for.
Correct.
Okay.
And
we're asking different questions.
10 families that pay as members, 3 million each. So the total price is $30 million
for the 10 and the 400-acre farm.
For both farms, which they own. They all own.
They'd all own. So 10 families would own a 10 and a 40-acre farm for $3 million each. So $30 million investment, essentially.
Correct. Now, if somebody funded the development of it, and by the way, that's my background, real estate development. If they funded the development of the farm, then there's a 50% rate of return for them, right? Because you have to charge the the membership a profit. Kind of look at it like as a golf club. You know, that the people who are paying the membership, there's a profit to the people who actually funded the golf club, right?
Right.
And so if I find one investor of $10 million, I can start this for New York, and it has a private landing strip. Now think about that. Long Island, you're a billionaire living on Long Island, and
Have
some
you
event
have you
happens.
done this anywhere yet, JC? Have you developed this property anywhere? Have you
On
built one yourself on 1 acre?
Well, we have a 50-acre farm here in New Jersey, just north of Princeton, of which I have half developed.
Okay. Is it producing?
So well, I've got the chickens, I've got the goats, I've got the syngas, I've got the freeze drying, I've got some food storage, I've got the tractors, I've got a gun or two, maybe, right? I've got the night vision, the thermal. I mean, I have a huge amount of what has to be done. And by the way, yes, you will need body armor, you will need thermal imaging, you will need night vision and stuff like this. And so
Wow.
yeah,
This is
I mean
dystopian view of where we're going into the future. It's Mad Max meets Huckleberry Finn almost.
it kind of that's kind of it, along with what's his name, the guy who always it was a TV show where that guy always solved the problems. I forgot, but basically that's what you need. You need an Amish farm that is self-sustainable, that's also protected like Rambo,
Right.
because
Okay.
that's what's and hidden, not easy to find, right?
Okay.
And you have you and the other important thing, there are two other important things I want to mention, is that not only do you have the skill sets to get through the crisis, you have the skill sets to rebuild society and the resources, right? Like welding equipment, like and just try, to give you an idea,
Yeah.
so that we can start to rebuild once we get back to some form of society. That's one. And two is, it's a social safety net for our veterans. Right.
Yeah.
Once I have a farm, all you need to do is put a trailer on there, a travel trailer, and you have a place where these people can live. And believe me, if we're going into this sewage storm, these are some of the people you want on your side.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you at all, JC. I mean, it's like I said, this is fairly dystopian, but as we start to see the beast unleashed inside the United States, which the cities are already starting to weather that storm. They're starting to see
That's
the
right.
ravages of the people that have been allowed in the country, because they were sent to the cities to destabilize the cities, and more people are pushing out into the country, the rural areas of the country, which means real estate eventually is going to come with a premium. I'm seeing some farms not with a premium right now in certain parts of the country, but I don't expect that to last long. I think we're just seeing the results of people are just squeezed with inflation, but at some point they're going to stop paying bills one place in order to make sure they have food for their family in another, right? So,
Yes, we're going to see some dominoes go. And then the other
right.
thing is, when the study of the Soviet Union and its collapse is very important, because in a week all of a sudden everybody lost their pension. It was gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Uh,
And then when the currency goes, and actually here's a big thing for Americans, and Michael Jan touched on it a little bit, but when the Soviet Union was 15 different countries with an umbrella corporation over it, when it collapsed, you had these individual 15 countries that didn't have any agreements on how to get anything done.
right.
But who owned the nuclear arsenal?
Good
And it's
question. But again, this, we can't solve that until we can make sure that we've got food security. So there's going to have to be a collaboration from some good members of the former government, whatever that was, and whatever it
that's
is.
correct. That's
So,
correct. And so we have this, if our federal government breaks, then we lose our currency and our ability to exchange, and we lose
my,
the laws of exchange.
yeah, well, I would believe our military would step in and secure the nuclear facility, considering if they fall back under civilian control and out from underneath the mob control that's occurring up in Washington, D.C. But JC, this has been quite interesting. I want folks to be able to, look at what you've got going on. I know you're looking for investors, particularly for your 10 and your 40 or 400 acre farm up in New York. What is the best place for folks to find you? Is that your website, American Heritage Farms, which is
Yes,
ahfarms.org?
correct.
Okay,
And there's
ahfarms.org.
right, and there's a load of information. And I know that, for instance, you had, I have a whole bunch of interviews on there explaining it. Easy to find me, hard to find where I am. um, and so this is kind of like how would you say it? The creating the quartermaster. We're seeing the team of Americans coming to defend the country, but you
Right,
have to have your quartermaster. You have to
right.
protect your farms, right? And so that's where I'm focused.
Beautiful. JC Cole, American Heritage Farms. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ann.
Hi, I'm Ann Vandersteel. I want to talk to you a little bit about your health. Part of my daily routine is to get up in the morning and get a little exercise on. If I have time for a mile or 7, doesn't matter. I get out the door every single day. It's important to get my body moving and get that oxygen flowing through my brains. What is also equally important is what I put in my body after I exercise. I rely on vandersteelhealth.com, where I have a delicious selection of superfoods and other supplements. But first and foremost for me are my superfoods. I have a delicious shake every single day. It is organic, all made in the United States of America, non-GMO, never processed before, dehydrated superfoods. And when they reconstitute with water, milk, or whatever juice you like, it makes a delicious, healthy, plant-based protein supplement. And I say supplement because, frankly, I use this as a meal replacement. This is what's helped me lose the last 20 pounds of COVID. I'm back down to my fighting college weight, fitting in my college clothes, and feeling better than ever. So go to vandersteelhealth.com and get your delicious superfoods. Get on the transformation program with us. It's a 30-day kickoff, and it will get your day starting out great. And watch the weight just fall off. Watch the energy increase, the brain fog lift, and of course, the ancillary benefits in your hair, skin, and nails. All these things, you are what you eat. Remember that. Go to vandersteelhealth.com.